Right, it should be streaming on Facebook and on YouTube. Running a bit late today. I actually fell asleep. I do apologise, people. I was watching. I was doing a bit of prepping. Yeah, I was watching the Cassandra Crossing. I don't know if you remember that disaster movie from 1975 or whenever it was. But great movie. But anyway, it put me to sleep. Richard Harris, bless him, fantastic actor, put me to sleep. And now I'm awake, and my guest, Mel Calow, God bless her, is going to be calling in any minute to tell us what the situation is in Germany. But I just put on a coffee as well, yeah, because I kind of needed to wake up. So do me a favour, people, just give me 2-3 minutes to queue up, and then we'll start. Okay, if you're watching an archive version, you might want to fast forward. Guess what? Daily Chaos. Just another minute, people. Just another minute. I do apologise. Someone fell asleep and woke up at 5 to 6 or 5 to 5. Mel? Blimey. Trying to get me guess, folks. Yeah. Okay, you know what? We'll just start anyway. Hey, Mel, if you can hear, give us a shout back on Zoom. God bless you. Right. Okay, let's just start this thing. Why not? Why not? Let's do it. Yeah, there you go. What do? You do that. There you go. That's it. Right. Is that it? Hold on. That's not it. Oh, for crying out loud. You press that. Oh, and it's not working. Why is it not working? I don't know why it's not working. I know why it's not working. Because I took the thing out. I changed the file. Yeah, there you go. It doesn't matter. Right. Good evening. Oh, okay. We got some music. No countdown. We got a music. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good people. Welcome to the Daily Siesta. Which is precisely where I was 10 minutes ago. Hey Mel, whoa, cool. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Oh,
just getting
fantastic.
my headphones on.
Oh, beautiful. We've got your picture too. Excellent. I'll stick that on. Oh, beautiful. Gorgeous. You look gorgeous, girl. Mel Calow from Germany. Calling in from Germany. On the ground reports from around the world. Daily chaos. When we finally get streaming. You know what I mean? Yeah, 5 o'clock, give or take, GMT, 6 o'clock CET, 1 p.m. EDT, 4 o'clock in the morning Australia, Sydney, Australia, whatever. So going around the world basically with updates on what's going on with this thing and what have you for good and bad, some info and hopefully some a bit of humour as well. Keep the old spirits up. Bit of a... late start today. I do apologise for that because I was asleep. And Mel Calow, God bless her, called me up at 8 minutes to 5, 6, 1, 4, depending where you are, whatever your time zone is, before the show, and said, "Get awake, Ollie, sort out the damn show." And so here we are. Mel Calow, good evening, good morning, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Ollie. How are you?
Yeah, I'm waking up fast. I tell you, I've got a coffee here. We are streaming. We appear to be streaming on both YouTube and Facebook. And at least it didn't take too long to turn around the live show, including sorting out the graphic and all the rest of it. But here we are. Mel Calow, darling, you've been on Daily Brexit in the past, and were fantastic, conspiratorial lady, very, very keen to hear first all about what's going on in Germany. They seem to be doing quite well with this coronavirus thing. Where exactly are you, first of all, please?
We're in Dusseldorf, in northwest Rhine area, which is one of the places where it's been hit hard in the area of the north of, this part of Germany, and then in Berlin it's also been spreading as well.
I'm looking at the stats right now from Roylab, which is an incredible resource, by the way, telling us how this thing is spreading on a daily basis. And Germany does seem to be faring relatively extremely well. I don't know what they're doing, what they've got in the water or whatever, but if you compare, for example, Germany to Spain, Spain has 25,000 cases, 374 as of yesterday. Germany has 23,000 cases, 438 as of yesterday. Spain has 1,300 deaths, 1,378 actually. And Germany has 80. as of yesterday. Amazing. What is that? 8% of what Spain's casualty rate. What's the difference? Any idea?
Yes, some vague. I mean, from what I've heard from, we have some connections in medical staff, and from what we've read from official reports, that Germany has one of the highest numbers of hospital beds per 100 people in Europe. So we're kind of, I think it's third or second in that distribution, and I think that that's going to have a very big effect on the availability of care for patients that have that are emergency in desperate need of ICU and respiratory ventilators. Apart from that, in Dusseldorf, we have 270 cases at the moment. 16 of them are in ICU, and the hospital beds that are available in the area of Dusseldorf are 2,023 normal beds, 169 beds for ICU and intensive care. We have 10 hospitals here, and out of that, 129 were already occupied as of March 19th, and 75 beds are not for ICU, but they're available. 65 of those are currently in use, and out of the 2,023 that we have beds available, 1,400 are currently already occupied, and that's not to do with the corona patients. So there is a very big potential for the emergency services to be overwhelmed in the near future as the casualties or as the rate of infection rises.
That is incredible. That's fascinating to hear, though. So you're basically saying that Germany has a far better preparation for, well, it has a far more efficient, if you like, more thorough social system, and particularly when it comes to the health service.
Yeah, it would appear that way. But what happens is that in relation to the availability of hospital beds, the amount of cases that are in hospital is just as high. So we actually have, the marginally, of course, in comparison to other countries, I'm sure that it's a big difference. But in terms of numbers, once the rates start going up, it's still probably going to be an issue in Germany.
Sure. What is the sentiment on the ground with people? In Spain, people are pretty calm, I have to say, incredibly calm. In the UK, on the other hand, we're seeing some horrendous panic buying, fights in the shops and all that sort of stuff. What's the sort of state of play with regards to the, if you like, social demeanor in Germany?
Well, I mean, for somebody like me, we've been looking at this virus coming from China since January, and we've been thinking, okay, it's gonna move slowly, and seeing what happened in Italy and seeing what's happening in the UK, thinking this is already in the news, so people must have some kind of concept of what's happening and what to expect. So we've been preparing. Right here, we're stocked up for the next 3 weeks at least with no issues. But just to go out on the street today on a normal day, you would see people just on their bicycles, nobody wearing masks. It's a sunny day, so a lot of people go outside, even though Angela Merkel has already made statements that are, to be taken seriously about self-quarantining and taking responsibility to not put that toll in the medical services in the future. It doesn't appear that message is getting through with most of the people, at least in Dusseldorf. And we have actually been out in public with masks and just getting kind of funny looks. But there is one way that you can tell that there's something happening, because the shelves are already starting to empty up in the vital products like flours and bread, toilet paper, dried fruits, canned goods. And people are in the stores are actually, there's a lot of people in the stores. So they're starting to implement social distancing. So everybody has to start queuing when they're going into the store. They close the stores so they can restock the store. And then when you're inside, everybody has to space out. But I don't think that these measures are actually going to stop the virus. This is only to maintain a sense of calm and a sense of, progress so that people can get the things that they need. But there has been fights over toilet paper recorded on video. from people.
Really?
And you can tell when you go into the supermarkets that the cashiers are quite stressed. Obviously, a lot of people don't seem to be as informed. So when they see us, they kind of look a bit shocked or perplexed as to why we would be, like wearing masks and full, covered to the nines. So I think that the general sentiment in Dusseldorf is definitely not what it needs to be in order for us to be able to curb that, to maintain that curve where it needs to be, so the hospital services don't get overwhelmed.
Do you have quarantines in place at all in Germany yet?
It's mostly been a self-quarantine. I mean, Angela Merkel has said in all seriousness that this is important and that we need to keep social distancing, and they have implemented concepts of what that is and what that means and what people should be doing, that we should be protecting old people and that young people should not be out in the streets socializing, but nobody's actually taking that advice to heart. As you would see, for example, I'm from Guatemala. In Guatemala, there was the first confirmed case of the virus 1 week ago, and already the quarantine has started. People are not out in the streets. Everybody's wearing masks. And that's just from one official case in Guatemala, and people have just taken it seriously. So you can see the difference of the attitude. And obviously in Guatemala, I think it's because people realize that their hospital services aren't going to be able to support them if it does get out of hand. And I guess there might be a lot of trust here that it's only a virus, that you're only going to get it for so long and that it's going to go away, so that you're not going to be somebody that's affected. But obviously we know that the case is that you can transfer it to people who will be affected, and that's obviously dangerous.
It is a very interesting point and a frightening point. At the moment, it's summer in the southern hemisphere of our planet. But as that changes, and if this thing isn't controlled by then, which a lot of people are suggesting it won't be, on the other hand, also there are talks of a cure, and we'll come on to talking about that in a little while. Then it's a massive issue, is it not, for Africa, for South America, particularly those two continents, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It is Colombia. I think borders have already shut down. In Brazil, there's quite a big outbreak already, and in Argentina. So yeah, those countries are hugely populated.
That's a relatively warm time of the year for them.
Yeah.
When this thing is not supposed to thrive as well, being a coronavirus.
Yeah, but I think the case, for example, in Singapore or in South Korea, where the measures were implemented of testing, they were able to change that curve because of the fact that they could track where it was going. But for example, here in Germany, they have already decided that the only people who are going to be tested are the people that are in key services like hospital staff, medical staff, and the testing for your average citizen isn't actually going to happen anymore, because obviously there's not enough tests being made, so the access to them is not as easy.
Just a story regarding
today. I can announce that for the first time in our history.
That's Rishi Sunak there in the video. Just a story which applies to the whole world, but this is a UK-based story from the not-so-independent newspaper Coronavirus News Live. UK public urged to stop selfishly shopping as Spain records one-day rise in deaths. Tens of thousands of bars, restaurants, cafes and gyms across the UK have remained closed this morning as the government battles to control the spread of coronavirus. Basically, it's last orders, In fact, it's a drink up time in the UK. A ban Boris Johnson has promised to strictly enforce through licensing rules if necessary. And we've seen some quite reckless scenes with people getting together in pubs and bars. And in the States, for example, with a whole bunch of, probably Democrats congregating for spring break or whatever in Florida, Miami Beach, and so on and so forth, to party on and try and, spread this thing so they can then take it back to their grandparents. I don't know, mad insanity. But anyway, this comes as three American stars, New York, New York, Illinois, and California, entered into lockdown amid a rise in cases across the US, with American hospitals already under pressure. officials are desperate to prevent or at least limit a repeat of what has happened in parts of China, Italy and Spain, where the outbreak has overwhelmed medical services. Elsewhere, China and South Korea have reported a rise in imported coronavirus cases on Friday and Saturday, respectively, as expatriates return home from the US and Europe, sparking fears of a second wave of infections, just as the two countries recover from the initial outbreak. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has told young people they are not invincible and are continuing to place themselves at risk of serious illness or death by not practicing social distancing. And it's not just about your own health, people, and particularly the youth of today, but it is also about protecting people around you, be it your hopefully well-loved elderly relatives, and indeed not overwhelming the health service in whatever country that you're in, so that we can try and get that bump down, maybe into more of a longer kind of a scenario for us to suffer as societies, but hopefully for our health services at least then to be able to sustain. So Mel, there's a few things there. Go on, please.
Sorry, I don't know if you saw there's a viral video going around at the moment that a Spanish doctor did, and he was basically completely lost, his temper, but in a very educationally entertaining form that young people can maybe relate to, where he's just basically cursing out of them and saying, this is ridiculous. I do not understand how you can all be so concerned with your Instagrams and your iPhones and everything else except for what's currently happening, which is something that you need to be taking seriously. And I mean, it's really a telling off, and it seems to be the kind of thing that these people need to actually understand, or perhaps they might ignore it, but at least it seems that his outburst was passionate enough that it might actually get the message across, and it's going viral. So let's hope that's going to make a change.
It is incredible, isn't it? I mean, I think we do see. I don't know. I don't know what it is with young people. They seem to think. I don't know what to think. I don't know whether it's just that they're not at all honed into what goes on with global events, or what. I mean, are they? Of course, they're not all asleep. There's lots that are very, very acutely aware of what's going on, but there does seem to be a remarkable number. Why are they, or have they, at least until, I don't know, a day or so ago, for example, not been interested in the effects of this thing, do you think?
I have thought about this, and I think that it might be a combination of two factors. One of them is that they are millennials and they are young. Millennials are no longer the youngest generation, but their mindset has come from a generation that hasn't really had to go through extreme hardships. They managed to live through the last recession that we had, and be young enough to maybe not think about it. And at the same time, they've grown up being taught that the world is about to end because climate change and these extinction rebellion. Extinction Rebellion, exactly. They have this mindset that possibly human beings shouldn't even be living on this planet. So at the end of the day, with those two things combined, the attitude's obviously going to be, I come first, and whatever I do is important, and it might be the last thing that I do. So fuck it. Sorry, I'm not sure if I was supposed to swear.
No, you're not. But you did. Absolutely. It is incredible, isn't it? They do seem to have this kind of nihilistic attitude. I don't know. Some interesting things that have happened out of this, as an aside, in terms of the environment, which has been positive, I guess. It has. Is that, for example, in the canals in Venice, they're finding there's loads of fish. In the canals in Venice. That's not normally seen with all the propellers and all the rest of it. In Madrid, they've got wild boar, jabalís. They've got wild boar that are roaming into the suburbs of the city now.
Wow.
And the other thing is, we got nothing. We're seeing nothing of Greta Thunderbollocks.
Yeah, no comment. I don't want the millennials to hate me. But yes, apart from that, there's very positive things. In China, also, the skies seem to have been clearing because the manufacturing companies were shut down for long enough, and the cars were not on the streets for long enough. And yeah, we have some other things that are happening around the world. It's basically an environmental reset, and I think Mother Earth is getting a break, and we all need to actually put that into our conscience and understand how big the effect that we have on the planet is.
Yeah.
And you know, just doing this for the time being can actually allow for it to regrow, and nature always continues despite whatever humanity is.
It is incredible how nature takes back so quickly. Where I live, I'm by the sea on the Mediterranean, and when we have a big winter storm, the sand is cast over the kind of the first promenade and all that. It's all taken back, and then you see like dung beetles wandering about on there within days and stuff like that. It doesn't take long for Mother Nature to kick back, and maybe we'll see that with this. There are some, I guess, some positives, at least that we can see the kind of impact we have without, quite aside from all this global warming stuff, because I personally haven't got a clue where any of that is coming from, sun cycles, earth cycles, or what. I just wonder how much of it is a big scam to drum up tax. But on the other hand, we are seeing absolutely that there is a big change, certainly around city life at the moment. One of the things, I suppose, otherwise that will be positive about this horrendous crisis, really, socially, otherwise, is that families will, maybe not straight away, but very, very soon, within probably just a few more days or so, at least, of nations going into lockdown and quarantine, they will have to come together and pull together.
Yeah, that, and they will also be separated. I have some friends who were out on their holiday in Colombia, and they actually got when they got to Colombia, they shut down the borders in Colombia. She's a Mexican, so she wasn't able to return to Germany because the borders were shutting down in Germany. So now she's having to go to Mexico. Her boyfriend's going to go back to Germany. And here in Germany, one of the positive things that they're doing is the government is already sending out flights to retrieval flights for its citizens. So people that are stuck in other countries are able to basically get home before the borders are shut down.
Are you hearing of problems, on the other hand, with technology? Because, yes, you're absolutely right. People are also being split up, and particularly elderly people again. I mean, I'm trying to keep in touch with my mum, for example, who's 87 in the UK. But I'm finding it is getting quite expensive on the mobile phone bill because, like a lot of people, a few years ago, I ditched my landline because I never really used it, using the internet instead. But the internet, are you finding also, are you hearing reports? It seems to be getting a bit clogged.
Yeah, definitely. Here in Germany, my husband works from home a couple of times a week usually, and we're finding that the connection is getting slower as more people are staying home and working from home, and obviously more people are video conferencing and more people are watching Netflix, and so there is quite some strain on the networks, I think. And as somebody that follows Q, we have been told that it can get to a point where the internet could be cut off, and then we would have no communication, and the only communication that we would have would be through telephone lines. So a lot of us have already exchanged telephone numbers in case that were to happen. It's supposed to happen for 10 days max, but that's a different subject.
That is something that does worry me because on the one hand, you could say, you know, there's too many memes floating about and it's just complete overload of the system or what have you. But on the other hand, there's a lot of gallows humor as well right now. And that's the kind of stuff, blitz spirit, if you like. If Germany, where you are living at the moment, Mel will forgive that reference. There's a kind of like keep buggering on type mentality is required as well. And people, we are social animals. We do need to stay in touch with each other. It is a worry. And we do desperately need the internet. But our forefathers had these kind of problems, and they didn't have any of that. I mean, in a way, we're very, very lucky, despite lack of loo paper, perhaps, in the aisles at the moment, because I imagine that there's a hell of a lot of it in the distribution centres that is, about to come in to play. If people would just stop bulk buying it, for crying out loud. Despite all of those sort of silly Western problems, if you like, we do so rely on the internet now. But on the other hand, we're bloody lucky to have it, no?
Absolutely. This is a life-changing thing. I mean, I think that we're going to remember it as our war as a generation. But aside from that, we're probably the most prepared generation to have that happen in the first place. My husband works from home, and his job has been able to continue so far. Industries that would probably have been shut down with no connection are actually still continuing. We still have distribution centers going in and out, supermarkets saying they're going to be able to provide food as long as the workers are there and the supermarkets are open to selling it. In Germany, we've actually found that we tried to make online orders for food. It's not available for the next 10 days, but I think that that's going to be a situation where the closer you get to a quarantine, the more people kind of have a little panic of how much food they're going to be able to need. And then once that kind of curve goes, then the panic buying will slow down and more people will be able to have access to that kind of shopping. But
you and your husband, you're not strictly speaking in quarantine at the moment. How much more time are you spending at home? Has your husband been told to stay away from his regular workplace to help?
Yeah, he's currently fully been put, like his company has closed off to anybody who can work from home. It has to work from home officially at this point. And we have been in a self-quarantine for the last 2 weeks because obviously having been informed and knowing that this was coming, the more of us that actually take this decision, the less the strain is going to be in the medical services and the less that we're going to see chaos kind of ensue. So we're just kind of trying to get ahead of the curve and trying to convince as many people as possible to stay home.
Wow. So how are you finding that? Because that adds its own pressures in daily life as well. Have you got you need a bit of space from each other too, no? Even if you're a very happy couple.
Yeah, luckily we have 2 floors, so when we don't want to see each other, we don't have to see each other. Right. but just in the kitchen sometimes. But generally, I was going to the gym a few times a week, feeling super. It was going to be like my best year. I was super fit, and now it's thinking about going out for a bike ride and things like that. It's just something that you have to think about and you have to consider and you have to maybe prepare for it. And it's just, there is a big change in the attitude that you have. I was following somebody who was in Wuhan and who's basically, lived through the crisis there and his advice. And he says, 40% of this is your mind. You have to maintain a positive attitude, a positive outlook, and things are going to change and you have to come to terms with those changes. You have to understand that the choices that you make now are different and they're probably going to be like that for a while. But it does help to bring together communities. If you can find people that are like-minded and that are, already thinking in terms of how to best prepare and how to best manage the situation. I've created a group here for expats in Düsseldorf. I'm sharing information all the time about how to, do anything from keep vegetables fresh to make bread just with water and yeast, just in case that there's actually people here that have part-time jobs and who don't know how they're going to be making ends meet in the next few months if the government's not going to pay out 90%, I think it is, of their paychecks. So, we have to think about as a community what we can do for those people and what we can do to support old people as well. So it's about kind of staying in touch and keeping that attitude of we can do something and we must do something.
Yeah, good on you for putting together. And I've seen a bunch of those groups around, and they are every bit as important, I guess, as anything that can be done by the government.
I think so. I mean, I think if you think about the past generations and the generations of our grandparents, that's what they did. They just rolled their sleeves up and managed and found ways to manage. And I mean, the government did have initiatives, but it's always a grassroots movement that's going to actually affect change at the rate that it's needed, I think.
We'll come on to a little bit more about the social aspect of this and things that people can do staying at home and what have you. It's interesting what you say. For example, making bread out of water. Well, we'll come on to some more of that in a minute and go into that in a bit more detail. I just want to take a few comments, see what folks have got to say. Shan Tiggs, who is in Germany, I understand. Hi, Shan. My mum, who is 80 and quarantined in the UK, cannot get a shopping slot until the 24th of April. So if shops haven't stopped panic buyers, then they better do it fast, or old people will die. One of the things that's going on in the UK, I know at least, and in Spain as well, I happen to know, is that there are some hours of shopping being devoted purely to pensioners, so that they get a chance to go shopping without, if you like, some of the more chaotic generations, or with a bit more, I don't know, testosterone or whatever. So at least there's a bit of respite for them there. Stav Woodcutter says, going to bed hungry is something I remember very well as a kid. Bless you, Stav. He's an old boy, is our Stav. Well, he's not that old, but he's a bit older than me, and I'm certainly getting on. William Davies, by the way, no video on here. Okay, on Facebook though, no video on YouTube. Really? Blimey, I'll have to have a look at that after the show, I guess. I had problems on Facebook yesterday, but then it turned out, guess what? It was my fault, having blamed Nick Clegg. But you've got to blame Nick Clegg about stuff, and he generally deserves it. Retro Gamer 71, I just went through the government webpage for COVID, and it produces a COVID dick note you can send to your, I think ill, sickness note. You can send to your employer without needing to see a doctor. Mel, it is true. There are going to be people that will take advantage of this situation one way and another. But what can you do? I mean, the fact is that there are so many tens of millions of people per nation that are struck down, be it financially or it's in so many different ways with this thing, that despite the fact that there are going to be a bunch of sharks come out and do some terrible things and maybe some horrid stories we're going to see, the fact is that you just have to give society as a whole the benefit of the doubt, no?
Well, I think that we have to basically brace ourselves. I mean, we can only, I'm sure most people haven't seen half of the footage that was coming out of China in January. And, some of those stories are very scary. Apart from that, we have, the economic turmoil that might come, and with plenty of people that are going to be, they're not being able to process what's going to happen to them in the next few months. My husband's brother owns 2 restaurants, and he's got 16 employees. And he's looking at a cost of up to 500,000 euros for just paying out those employees for the next few months. And if he has no business, there's no way that he can stay in business. So he's having to close down his restaurant, which means that other people are going to be out of a job, even though the governments in his country are paying a percentage of the staff's wages. Here in Germany, it's 60%, which means that for some people, they're going to have to figure out how they're going to make ends meet at the end of the month. So as a generation, I mean, as the world at the moment, we all need to come to terms as fast as possible with the new reality that might be coming our way. Because if we're not prepared for it, there's going to be more chaos than necessary, more strain than necessary on the systems. So it's just the reality is that we need more people to take this situation more seriously faster.
Let me just clarify that. So you're saying what the deal is in Germany at the moment is that the government, or basically tax, is going to fund up to 60% of, what is that, employees' wages? In the UK,
Yeah.
I understand the government has said that we will be honouring 80% of paychecks.
Yeah, that's correct. 60% in this country.
Right. Okay. So how does that, for example, affect your brother-in-law? Will he still have to close his restaurants, do you think?
Well, he's actually in Holland, so it's a slightly different pay rate. But he actually had trouble. I don't remember the exact story, but he actually had trouble because he was taking initiative to change his business model in order to be able to provide for people. So he started offering takeaway coffees and deliveries and things like that. And because the restaurant was still making money as opposed to losing money, they decided that they didn't purposely penalize it, but he didn't fit into the category where the business can actually get refunded for the losses. So now he needs to actually stop all the proactive things that he was doing, so he does fit into that category, so he can make the payments at the end of the month.
Okay, thank you. We've actually got Amanda Rolfson coming in on Monday to tell us a bit more about an on-the-ground report from Holland, just out of interest. Also Australia and Canada and the United States, so far, reports coming in next week. Right, okay, let's take a few more comments and see what people are having to say. William Davies, and more interestingly, no chemtrails. William Davies is saying, with one or two passionate words in there, which I've edited out, no chemtrailing going on. Actually, you know what? It's been since this whole week. The weather in Spain, in Valencia, has been quite downcast, very cloudy, and I've not been able to see. Normally here, you can see, it is like God's on coke. It's like Keith Reach's coffee table up there. You can see it is that grid pattern going on, that checkerboard. But I've not been able to see what's going on over the course of this last week or so. I suppose in Germany, a bit like the UK, Mel, it's harder for you guys to tell whether or not they're chemtrailing. Do you see? Have you noticed any change?
I am one of the people who keeps track of that. My husband thinks that I'm a nutcase, but there was a distinct amount of lines in the sky at different times last summer that I was just thinking were completely outrageous, and I was photographing the sky. And as it is for the last week or so, I haven't seen anything that resembles that kind of cloud. But we've had some very nice days here, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think you're a nutcase at all. I mean, as with many of these sort of theories, I did used to think they were pretty nutty. But I remember the skies when I was a kid during the summer, and we didn't. Airplanes, confluence trails do not dissipate into clouds because they're steam, and so they dissipate into nothing, or clouds that are invisible anyway. And
we're in agreement about that.
Yeah, and now we're living. I've been here about 15 years in Valencia, 14 years, and there are days when you see a true beautiful Mediterranean sky. But most of the time, you see the planes going across and doing some strange flight paths as well, coming back on themselves and things like that, and spraying this stuff out, which does dissipate into clouds. And from a beautiful sky first thing in the morning, then by dusk, the whole sky is cloudy. And none of that is regular cloud. It really is quite peculiar, but I can't see it. You can see it before your eyes. So many people, though, I say this to, and they're like, no. I think that people just don't look up. I don't know. Anyway, Phantom Prophet says toilet paper is starting to stay on the shelves a lot longer here now. It's like everyone who wanted to stockpile has now got all they need. And I guess, Mel, that is going to happen now, because there is a lot of stuff in distribution centres. I think, who was it? Macron, I think it was, said that there was enough loo paper in France to last the country for 10 years. For example, maybe the stockpiling, maybe it will stop. Maybe people will calm down, or is that wishful thinking? What happened in Wuhan?
I think it's right. Well, we've seen a video from Holland of a guy who was in one of the warehouses, and it's just endless and endless rows. But if you perceive a loop paper to be something that is needed to go to the bathroom, then obviously you are not looking at the potential that toilet paper has. So I'm not one of these people who has gone crazy stockpiling, but I do have enough to not have to worry about it at the moment. But we have read some reports that people are using the toilet paper as a possible barter item for the future, in case there were some kind of economic meltdown. So when you think about, I saw this video of this German lady in the shop today, and she was one of these people who was clearly very stressed, and she's probably somebody that is of low means. And if you have something to barter with, thinking logically, toilet paper seems like a legit thing to be able to trade, because it can be used by everyone for anything really. Whereas if I was to say, I have a bunch of oranges, can I have some of your flour? People might say, I'm not going to need oranges today. But when there's no flour in the shelves like we're seeing at the moment, and somebody has toilet paper, then that might actually be a fair exchange. So as ridiculous as it may seem, if we were to go into an economic situation that is disastrous, people of low means might actually be doing something intelligent.
My word. I'm actually not concerned so much about losing, about there not being any toilet paper. But what I am...
No, it's not. I don't think it's the availability, but the bartering potential. I think that's more...
But from the point of view of survival, the thing that has concerned me a little bit, and maybe this is a bit paranoid, I think it probably is, I hope it is if there isn't any clean water coming out of the tap.
100% agree with you, which is why we have a triple osmosis filter here in the house. We've always had that because I've always been one of these people who is very aware of what comes into the water and comes into the house and comes into the food that we eat. So generally, I try to be as clean as possible with all of those things. And we did get a very good filter installed. So our only worry would be that for some reason the water we cut off, we're not expecting that. But we do. We have seen, in the shops, people taking water away a lot, and there is potential for those things. In terms of what the virus is, waterways don't seem to be an issue, but there has been information in studies that in China, through the toilets, people were actually getting contaminated from the virus because it stays in your bodily fluids. So if you were to go to the toilet after somebody was there and it can get airborne, then you can see how that would work. Yes,
absolutely. I guess looking at the kind of statistics that we have seen of people being infected or not, the vast majority of people, for example, in China, just to put this into perspective, what is it? How many billions of people live in China? What is it? 2-3 billion? 20% of the world's population, basically. Only 81,000 have become infected, of which now 71,500 have recovered. Yeah. They've lost 3,255 people there as of yesterday, and they seem to be plateauing now. The point being, in terms of this, there are plenty of people to keep the country going. For example, to keep the water plants working. No, so we shouldn't have to worry about that too much. One thing that I have read that people are doing, which seems absolutely ridiculous, is chucking all sorts of stuff down the toilets when they don't have loo paper. Don't do it. Don't do it. Have a shower after you go to the loo or something. For crying out loud,
absolutely.
don't be chucking.
I don't know if you saw reports of the big balls of toilet paper that were being found in London a few years ago, because people were starting to use wet wipes instead of actual toilet paper. And because those wet wipes actually don't disintegrate at the same rate, they get clogged up into the sewage system. And I mean, they grow into these massive, like 3-meter balls of toilet paper, and then the whole system gets clogged up, and then they have to open the roads and things like that. So let's hope that people are going to be not as creative.
I think they're sort of
and just maybe
middle class toilet paper, aren't they? Wet wipes. They are a real worry, irrespective of what's going on at the moment, and not only in the sewage systems, but also in the seas. I have to say that swimming in the Med sometimes is not terribly pleasant, and you see kind of some of these things floating about, and again, we're having a bit of a reality check on what's going on. Going to take a few more comments and see what folks have got to say. Armin, and if anybody wants to call in, then please do. Actually, you know what? A bit of an alternative idea today, because I put an incorrect link for the show's number today, but I will put out a telephone number for Skype if you want to call on Skype to ask any questions or have a chat, make a point, what have you. And please do, let's make this show as interactive as possible on an international basis. And try and, I don't know, have a bit of a laugh or whatever, and share it, subscribe, and all that. Wonderful. Armin Ahmoud says, imagine if mass power cuts and then everyone's frozen food stash going off. Well, again, Armin, thank goodness, such are the stats. We're not looking at anything like that kind of a crisis yet. Thank God. Amanda Thompson says, idiots using kitchen roll and other stuff. Next thing will be the piping and sewerage system messing up. And yeah, she's absolutely right. We're seeing a bit of that. Armin Ahmoud also says, I work in distribution centre and it's busy as, guess what? Sarah Manning, online shopping. The NHS are involved to help identify all with respiratory problems, to stop those without lying about it and abusing the system. They're working on it and over the weekend, and will update their websites Monday. Sainsbury's told me this morning. So please don't panic, guys. It's in hand. And Amanda Rolfson, who's coming on the show tomorrow from Holland. God bless you, Amanda, and your other half, Eric. We had the beginning of the week, gorgeous weather, blue sky. Out they came, clouding it up. Talking about the chemtrails, I guess. I was annoyed. And Elaine Howe says, ice cream vans could stock food and toilet roll and visit old people. Sarah Manning says, Ollie, the supermarkets are making an announcement on Monday, redelivery slots for the elderly, those with young kids and those in medical isolation. They are working it out with help from the amazing NHS. I want to play something which was sent to me in a message a bit earlier today. Let's see if I can find this. But I think it sounds like some pretty good advice. Mel, go on.
I also heard that Iceland was actually going to be delivering strictly to old people and people with special needs.
Oh, really? Really, that's good. Because there has been, for example, Ocado, I understand, and Tesco's, is Ocado Tesco? Anyway, I understand that the home shopping services, and also from what you said earlier, they have been absolutely inundated, but they are crucial for elderly people now.
Yes, I don't know how they're going to, at least here in Germany, how they're going to proceed, but in England, it looks like everybody's being very proactive with their, early morning shopping hours for old people and these special deliveries. I think there was a man in Manchester, I think, or owner of a hotel chain that offered for doctors to be able to sleep in the hotel rooms for free while they were working as ICU staff so that they wouldn't have to be concerned when they go home every night to their families of transmitting the virus.
I'm just putting that number in the comments if anybody wants to call in. It's a bit late because I'm actually going to stop in about 10 minutes time. So I was a bit disorganized. I do apologize. I fell asleep. That's why the show was late today, and various things cocked up as usual. Daily chaos, yeah. But I do apologize. We'll be back to normal. Not tomorrow, Monday. Having a day off tomorrow. Actually, this is going to be now. This show is Monday to Saturday at 5 p.m. GMT, 6 p.m. CET, 1 p.m. Eastern time in the States. Mr. President, if you want to call in and tell us about how you're draining the swamp and give us a few laughs there, that'll be fantastic. Australia, Sydney, Australia, I think it's about 4 a.m. But I will nonetheless, 033 000 11264. If anybody does want to call in briefly just to have a chat, that's on Skype. But normally I would give you the details on how to call in on a different system. But we can use Skype today if you like. But it's just a regular UK national rate, that is. That's UK, yeah. So if you're somewhere else, it's a bit more expensive. I normally have a better system, which is more international, so that you can use a number from wherever you are around the world. So it's a local rate. But today I've just got UK national rate. I want to play this. And then take your closing thoughts, please, Mel, on some of what's being said. A lot of people, of course, we did a show last night, yesterday morning, afternoon, whatever else, depending on where you were, with Dennis Spain, who, confusingly enough, lives in Hawaii, not Spain. And he was telling us all about different ways that you can protect yourself, your immune system, and what have you. Some terrific tips he gave us. As well as all sorts of wonderful conspiratorial stuff with Jay Carey yesterday. This lady,
I need to watch
here,
that show. I missed it.
Yeah, Mel, you do. It was a funny
it sounds
show.
Great.
It was. Beverly Taylor King, bless her, sent this. I'm not sure who this is in the message, but I did think it would be worth a play because it sounds to me as though there are some good tips here. So let's have a quick listen to this.
Hi guys. Just wanted to pass on this information. It was sent to me by a colleague who has a friend that works at Dr. Negrin, which is the main hospital on our island. It's obviously in Spanish, so I'm just going to read it and translate it for you. This is what it says. The Chinese now understand the behavior of the COVID-19 virus thanks to autopsies that they have carried out. This virus is characterized by obstructing respiratory pathways with thick mucus that solidifies and blocks the airways and lungs. So they have discovered that in order to be able to apply a medicine, you have to open and unblock these airways so that the treatment can be used to take effect. However, all of this takes a number of days. Their recommendations for what you can do to safeguard yourself are: number 1, drink lots of hot liquids, coffee, soups, teas, warm water. In addition, take a sip of warm water every 20 minutes because this keeps your mouth moist and washes any of the virus that's entered your mouth into your stomach, where the gastric juices will neutralize it before it can get to the lungs. Number 2, gargle with an antiseptic in warm water, like vinegar or salt or lemon, every day if possible. Number 3, the virus attaches itself to hair and clothes. Any detergent or soap kills it, but you must take a bath or a shower when you get in from the street. Avoid sitting down anywhere and go straight to the bathroom or shower. If you cannot wash your clothes daily, hang them in direct sunlight, which also neutralizes the virus. Number 4, wash metallic surfaces very carefully because the virus can remain viable on these for up to 9 days. Take note and be vigilant about touching handrails and door handles, etc. I guess within your own house as well, you can make sure that you are keeping those clean and wiping them down regularly. Number 5, don't smoke. Number 6,
Boo.
wash your hands every 20 minutes using any soap that foams. Do this for 20 seconds and wash your hands thoroughly. Number 7, eat fruits and vegetables. Try to elevate your zinc levels, not just your vitamin C levels. Number 8, animals do not spread the virus to people. This is person-to-person transmission. Number 9, try to avoid getting the common flu, I guess because this just already weakens your system, and try to avoid eating and drinking cold things. And number 10, if you feel any discomfort in your throat or a sore throat coming on, attack it immediately using the above methods. The virus enters the system this way and remains for 3 or 4 days within the throat before it passes into the lungs. Good luck to everyone. Take care of yourself and pass this information along if you wish, he says. So I've heard a lot of the same thing from a lot of different sources. So it seems to me that this is now kind of very credible advice that people can be taking on board to try and protect themselves. Hope it helps. Bye.
Lovely
Hi,
lady.
guys.
Blimey. Lovely
Just
lady.
wanted to pass on this information.
hold on.
It was
Blimey.
sent to me by a colleague who has...
Right, okay, good. Wonderful. So, I don't know, Mel. I mean, I've heard some conflicting reports about some of those tips, but basically none of it is going to do any harm, is it?
Absolutely not. I mean, we're probably taking some of the most stringent measures that we can here. Maybe my husband, it doesn't take it as seriously as I do, but my mother used to work in the ICU when I was younger, and she's always been a germaphobe, and she's always, just made it imperative that we think about these things. So I've been looking at reports and information since January, like I said, and following the advice from this guy who actually lives in Wuhan, saying that because this virus is supposed to be airborne, I think it's been interpreted by most people to be airborne to the point that these droplets are going to come from somebody's breathing, and they're going to not go more than 2 or 3 meters from where they are. But there's also evidence that aside from these droplets, that some of the virus does stay airborne as well, because medical staff have got it even when they haven't been in the areas where they're wearing this all their, yeah, exactly, and they've gotten ill from it. So there was a woman, I can't remember the name of the hospital, I think it's in Massachusetts, that released a report this month, and some of the measures that it was recommending were exactly what she said, and that the fact that this virus is airborne would explain, if I don't know if you've seen pictures of people in China wearing buckets over their heads. But,
all sorts. Pumpkins,
exactly.
all sorts.
Oranges, whatever they can get. But the point of it being that they are actually covering the entirety of their upper body, because, like she said, if the virus is going to be on your hair when you get home, you need to get into the shower as soon as you get in the home, because you're bringing it in with you. So the least places that it can be on, the better for you, I suppose. So that would explain why people are doing that. And my husband went out today. He went to the shop. He came back. He took his clothes off. I put them straight into the washing machine. He went to have a shower, and then I cleaned every single item that came into the house with alcohol solution and the disinfectant solution. And I know that sounds very extreme, especially when you are thinking that the people literally outside our door are walking their children down the street and are on a bicycle, and none of them are wearing any protective gear, that we're taking these extreme measures. But I personally have been following this for a long time, I've seen a lot of information on it. I've seen a lot of people, personal stories, and I would rather be on the side of caution than just be one of the people that's contributing to the problem, mainly because we might not even get it very harshly, but we could be one of the people that can transfer it to others. So just taking all the measures possible. I think if every one of us tries to do as much as we can, we're going to make a difference.
I want to reiterate that point, because it's not just about us getting it individually. Because I mean, Mel, I mean, you look like a very healthy woman, and I imagine your husband is as well. I am, frankly, pretty healthy, very healthy woman. But it's not just about protecting ourselves, is it? If we catch this thing, it's also about protecting other people, and it's about not inundating the health service wherever we are. One thing I have heard is that this thing can attach itself to your clothes, and so when the kind of clothes that I use when I go shopping, for example, I come home and I change, and I have a shower as well. So I don't know if that makes me paranoid or whatever, but that's what I'm doing too. And another thing that it does appear to be the case, and it kind of sticks in my throat to have to say this, because I so detest the idea of a cashless society, because cash is one of the last liberties that we have. But cash is a great transmitter, is it not, of this virus? And I've actually been thinking, I haven't done it yet, but I think I should, is empty the coins out of my wallet and put them in some water with vinegar before handling them again. I mean, that is really everything that you have to think about, that you have contact with. No,
it is. I mean, the more that we go out, the more that we have to keep in mind when we come back, because you become more and more aware of all the possible little things that you can do. And obviously what comes next is that you want to do them as least times as you possibly can, because every time that you have to do all of these things to get out of the house, it's a big hassle. So obviously I've heard of medical staff that are coming home because they have one of the biggest possibilities of making their families or being contagious and giving it to their families, that they're actually quarantining themselves inside of their own houses, so that when they get home, they have no access to the other part of the house where their family is. So they don't have to think about those things, because you can imagine they're already thinking about it every single moment that they're in the ICU. I've seen some really harrowing stories from nurses and doctors about that. And to come home and have to think that you could be responsible for that as well. So yes, definitely taking all the measures that you can and becoming as aware as you can about the actions that you take. I mean, I can't imagine that there's people, we have friends that are air flight attendant professionals and other people that have to be outside every day and have to do these jobs. Absolutely. And you have to think of these people as absolute heroes, because they know the risks that they're taking very clearly, but they also know the vitality of the jobs that they do. So one of the people that I'm talking about, he's been on these flights from Germany to go and recover citizens that are in different countries and bring them back. And every day that he does that, he's taking a risk. And so are the policemen, and so are the bin men that are outside. So I think as a society, we're going to have to reevaluate what these jobs are in the future and how important they are, and maybe be able to reward these people accordingly. Because we can obviously see how important the jobs that they do are.
Instead of the Oscars and the BAFTAs and the Grammys. Come on. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We honour the wrong people. 8:00 in Spain every night, everybody across the entire country, they get on their balconies, because everyone in this country in the cities live in flats, and they start applauding and cheering and hollering and cheering basically all the first responders. And that's not just the health folks. That's the girl or the bloke at the checkout at the supermarket, everybody that's getting the food on the shelves and all the rest of it, the people that are keeping the country going, basically. It's just incredible. It is stunning, fantastic. And when you go into official lockdown in Germany and in the UK, wherever it is, that is coming to a town near you, and it is a beautiful bit of spirit. It's the one time of the day when everybody gets to have a kind of a collective workout and let off a bit of steam. It really, really is nice. A couple of other points before we wrap up. I did want to ask you more about some of your organic stuff because that is fascinating. But we'll do that maybe another day. But food, I think, is another one. It's important for people to bear in mind. Easily overlooked, but very, very obvious as well. When you bring your shopping home, you should be washing your shopping. You should be washing your packaging and your vegetables and all the rest of it. Now some of it you're going to cook or whatever. But if you bring home, I don't know, a broccoli or something, then the different people maybe have touched it in the supermarket, and then you put it in the fridge. The fridge is a perfect place for a virus to live and be happy and go forth and multiply, all that stuff. So we do need, do we not, to be washing our stuff. But Mel, you tell me, because and by the way, your bag for life is now turned into a bag for bacterial life, and so you should probably be washing that as well. But I do wonder though. It seems very, very counterintuitive to wash your veg with soapy water, Mel.
I am guilty as charged. I have actually got back with cucumbers and broccolis from the supermarket, and luckily for us, they a lot of them come in plastic packaging, which is not good for the environment, but at this particular time it might actually be something good. So I spray those down as well with the disinfectant. And the actual cucumbers, which don't have covering in, I just ran under really, really hot water, because we know that the virus can't stand very high temperatures. So as soon as it's run through the very hot water, the probabilities that it's going to be there are less, obviously. I don't know that I'm eliminating it because I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but I'm thinking that that's the best I can do.
Dennis Bain, my guest last night, he had a fascinating idea. He said that what people should do if they start feeling some symptoms of this, or maybe even before, is to take a hairdryer, put it on not a total, blast furnace setting, but maybe 1 or 2 notches down, but hot air, and pump it down your throat.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
There's a video going around. I have it on the show notes. Well, I mean, at this point, I think it's whatever tool that you can have available to you. If you are in a position where you're not able to see the doctor, I have an example of people in the UK and London. They actually had the virus, or at least we're pretty certain that they've had the virus. They're 10 days at home with a very, very high fever, with coughing, all of the symptoms. They tried to get in touch with 111 doctors. And out of those doctors, every single one of them told them that they had to stay home because their temperature wasn't higher than 39 degrees. And that is actually a valid reaction to having hospital services that are being overwhelmed, because obviously you don't want every single patient that is not in a critical condition to come in. But the possibility that that person could have been in a critical condition is also very high, because when you have pneumonia, the symptoms that you have don't necessarily come out. You have a high fever, but the next thing that you could be having is I can't remember if it's called asphyxia or but you've seen videos of people in China where they start trembling, and it's because they're not having enough access to oxygen.
Really?
And this could be somebody that goes from having a fever of 39 to a fever of a little bit higher in a short period of time, and they're not having access to the hospitals. So of course, any kind of tool that we can throw at this, I think most people are willing to listen. The validity of those things, we can't be 100% sure unless they come from scientific studies or medical advice. But I mean, as far as gargling salt water and possibly drinking hot drinks, I mean, those things have been known to help. And obviously, hot hair dryer doesn't come too far from what having a hot drink is. So of course, that would probably make sense.
It's the heat, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
And one other thing about drinking, drink, soup, or whatever, is that you, instead of this, if this is lodged in your larynx or your throat or something, instead of you breathing it into your lungs, where then a lot of people are getting pneumonia or whatever. Is the some of the serious stuff with this? If you drink it down into your stomach, then it will be killed. Hopefully, by your stomach acids. No, is that not the logic there, or some of it?
Yeah, I think that's correct, scientifically correct. I think that the studies have shown that. And as I said, the study that I was going off, which was released by a hospital in Massachusetts, I can't remember. I haven't actually seen the study. I saw a medical professional talking about it, but it does say that the idea is to get that to come down your throat and into your stomach so that the acids in your stomach will neutralize it. But I mean, as of the virus, one of the good things about this virus is that it's a coronavirus. So that means that it's a upper respiratory virus that we already know. The COVID-19 is the strain of that virus. So it means that there's already a lot of research on it. And they've been able to understand that it's actually got a pretty weak structure, I think. So basically heat and products that are already well known can affect it. And just to leave this on a positive note, just one second here.
Okay. Just
I don't know if you've heard, but they've already found.
Oh, there you go. That's better. Go on.
I
That's
don't
right,
know if
Mel.
you've heard,
You were
but
breaking up a bit there. Carry on.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. I can now.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I don't know if you've heard, but they've already found that some studies on this chloroquine, which is a medication
Now hold
used
that
for
thought.
malaria.
Hold that thought. That's going to be my last question to go on a hopeful note. But what about copper? Because I'm hearing things about copper. Is that a silly idea, or should people be taking copper supplements? Have you heard anything about it?
I haven't heard about that at all. No, I mean, and that's the same thing with the silver. I can't remember what it's called right now.
Colloidal silver.
Colloidal silver. Yeah, colloidal silver.
Yeah.
I mean, those things, they've always been around in alternative science or alternative health circles. As to the validity of that, I personally am not a scientist or a doctor.
You're breaking
but
up.
I haven't heard about copper.
You're breaking up a wee bit, Mel. You're beginning to sound a bit like a Dalek there, actually. I don't know whether there's more people coming online or whatever. But anyway, look, gonna wrap up. But so not sure about copper, not sure about colloidal silver. But then there again, it can't hurt to try. As long as you're not literally swallowing copper coins, you might want to change. But I don't know. Anyway, right, chloroquine. Now, let me just read something it's in fact, this is my backdrop behind me from the Gateway Pundit. And Dr. Oz, stateside, is all quite excited about this thing. Dr. Mel Oz joined David Assman on Lube Dobbs a night or two ago to discuss the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. And he harped on the wonderful news on the chloroquine treatment for coronavirus. Dr. Oz, there was actually pretty big news yesterday. There was a paper that came out yesterday that was being discussed, but didn't get the attention that I thought it would from the mainstream media. And indeed, why not mainstream media? Why are you not talking about chloroquine? It sounds very, very odd indeed that you're not, unless you just work for Big Pharma or something. Anyway, the paper from France, that the use of an old drug, a malaria drug, together with the Z-Pack, seemed to dramatically impact on this virus. And that could be the biggest game changer of all that can alter if we can ever become Italy or not. But I'll give you the biggest, this is a quote from him, but I'll give you the biggest fact of all. In this study, they shortened the amount of time the patients excreted the virus down to 6 days. The norm is approaching 20 days. That completely changes the behavior of the virus, which means it may be actually more like a flu virus in its impact on us. It's still dangerous, but not as contagious. If drug that has already been on the market for 65 years, which is the case with this particular drug, could be effective in treating a new virus. Yes, there are potential side effects. There are eye problems that potentially arise. We know that. We use these drugs commonly, but I think it's worth the chance, and we should be doing this study starting today, and we'll know in 6 days. In the meantime, the task force is going to liberalise use of these medications. And just as an aside, top comment on that in Gateway Pundit says the mainstream media will not report this, as all they care about is creating the biggest panic possible in hopes it will cause Trump to lose the election. They don't care about the truth, especially if it's good news. Anyway, setting aside the politics or what have you of that, I have also, Mel, have heard very promising reports from New York. Hospitals there have been using this, and some patients who have been very unwell, I understand, have been brought back into the land of the living.
That's right. I mean, from what I've read, they have officially had success with this. I think Trump was able to pass some legislations or a law with the FDA, because before that, the FDA had a lot of bureaucracies in terms of what could be approved and what could not be approved for different types of treatments. And obviously, as this drug is something that has already been tested, so we know that it has a very low level of toxicity, which is usually what the gives people side effects from drugs. So they become more regulated in the market. Seeing that this drug has already been used for years and years and years, and it has a relatively good reputation, and being allowed to apply that to other to the COVID virus and give it to patients is an amazing solution, and hopefully it will be implemented. And as a drug, it's already available, which means that more people will have access to it, which means that we can have maybe hopefully lower death rates and
that's right. We could maybe tackle this thing a lot more quickly.
Transmission, yeah.
And also, I guess could be potentially a great deal cheaper because it's already been in circulation for 65 years. I guess a whole bunch of different drug companies are able to produce it. Nobody's going to have a monopoly on it.
Yeah, I mean, some people have been saying that Trump would be kicking Big Pharma's ass with this regulation if it does get implemented as the solution. Definitely.
Yeah, you know what? That is a conspiracy theory that we really, really must expand upon another time, Mel Calow. God bless you. Oh, hold on. What's going on there? Is it going to come back? What happened to me music? I don't know. There we go. A few technical hiccups tonight. This morning. This afternoon. Depending on where you happen to be. I was asleep was the main technical hiccup when the show was supposed to start. Mel Calow, thank you so much for calling me and waking me up.
You're welcome.
God bless you, Mel.
It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you. And please, we'll do this again soon. I do hope. I keeping close tabs on what's going on in Germany, which so far is just incredible. I mean, full marks, frankly. I do not like Angela Merkel at all. I do like my Teutonic cousins very much so, including my sister-in-law, by the way, who's German. But yeah, this is wonderful news coming out of Germany. It seems to be really handled very, very well there. Thank you, Mel Calow. And actually, just as an aside, quickly, because you are what, half Spanish and you're English and a bit German, or what?
I'm basically an international mutt. I have Spanish, Belgian, Swiss, Portuguese, and French, and I was born in Guatemala.
Blimey. God, what a Johnny foreigner. Good God. Thank you, Mel Calow. God bless you. Mel Calow.
Thank you, Olly. Great job, and have a good night, everyone.
Back on Monday, people. Having the day off tomorrow. I'm going to cook a nice bit of roast pork, actually, with all the crackling and all the rest of it. And so after that, I will have a siesta, and I will definitely be sleeping through. But Monday, Holland, Amanda Rolfson. Tuesday, Canada, actually. Mr. J, the mysterious Mr. J in Canada. We got Scott Kane, my mate in Australia, on Wednesday. And I don't know after that. So look, give us a shout. Let us know if you want to pop on and give us a bit of, what's going on in your neck of the woods. And otherwise, we'll have various guests and what have you. Okay, I'll catch you Monday. That's 5 p.m. GMT, 6 CET, 1 EDT, etc., etc., etc. Share the show, please. Share the show. God bless you. Good night. Or morning, or whatever it is. I've got no idea. I've lost. 5 days of quarantine. I ain't got a bloody clue what I'm doing or what my name is.